What made you join OSVX, or how did you hear about the whole initiative?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm so glad that I found you guys because I was like trying to get to do something to help more broadly during the times of the crisis, and it's nice to have found like a platform of so many different people with so many different backgrounds. Everybody is so passionate about getting things done, so I found it through Twitter, um, and I'm really passionate about public health and education, and I really feel that education it's kind of what leads to action.
Oh, well, we're absolutely delighted that you joined in, definitely. What about you, Jasmine?
It was sort of a similar thing of just, I think a lot of us sort of feel overwhelmed by everything going on. And I was like, how can I help with this in some way? I actually looked into buying a sewing machine originally to make masks, but I'm terrible at sewing. So I was Googling around to figure out how, as an engineer, I can help, which is what led me to the OSV website. And then when I started joining the Slack group, I think this was around the time that Paula had posted saying, hey, I want to do this like education, like outreach program. And I was just like, oh, wow, that's awesome.
How did your team form, or who was in your team?
So basically, the team formed by just people that presented the desire of like provide educational resources and help these to to make people change their behaviors.
Yeah.
I think from the get-go, everybody was clearly passionate about helping, but sort of what it settled into would be that Paula would give me the text of what she wanted and sometimes some pictures or video to reference. I would go and make illustrations, and then Doe, who's a graphic designer, would take the illustrations and really lay them out in a way that made the whole thing readable and clean. And then we got Abhishek on our team now too. So he's been working on some community-oriented flyers that we'll hopefully get to see soon.
And you chose to focus for your first kind of launch. Your focus was on information for frontline staff. And Paula, why did you think that was the most important thing to focus on first of all?
So one of the challenges I think is that we're really used to PPE, and of course we are always like as healthcare professionals like following the guidelines and the institutional guidance. However, like for example, when I think about like PPE and the whole like meticulous process, I think in the surgical field, or I think that when I'm entering a surgery, but in the ER. And in all of these settings that this crisis has brought the PPE, it's sometimes you need a refresher, and the frontline staff like they are thinking about so many things. Like there are so many guidelines and so many things that they need to be thinking about, that to have these little reminders about what are just the basic steps. And I thought that was like really important, especially because a mistake on the proper use of PPE can be deadly under these circumstances, because it exposes you, it exposes your family, exposes the patients. One of the materials I really like is the coming from home, because we want something to protect our families. And like the fact of knowing that there is some guidance, because there is a lot of things about what to do in the hospital, but then when I arrive home, how do I protect my family, and how do I protect the people that I also love?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anything that can take one moment of anxiety away from a frontline staff worker at the moment is absolutely essential. And I think probably what you mentioned there, Paula, like some people in their clinical profession are used to, putting on PPE a lot, but others who now have to might not be as familiar, and they just might need a reminder, or people that work in, you know, retirement homes now have to wear PPE, and they don't maybe they might not have had that experience before. So there's lots of dimensions.
Well, so normally when I draw, I tend to draw cartoons. So I think this was sort of the natural intersection of me looking at hospital signs and seeing how they tend more towards really vague symbols just to keep the language universal. And then I guess to some degree, I can't keep the cartoon out of whatever I do.
Yeah, no, I think it's really effective. And again, it's, you know, in a time where things are scary and things in hospitals are quite, you know, faceless to some extent because everyone's wearing PPE, it's nice to feel that these aren't scare tactics, that they have, you know, a human element to them, and they're quite friendly.
Like the whole goal is to keep the visual language simple, and a lot of these are meant more to be like reminders rather than a thorough set of instructions for someone who's never done this before. And given that simplicity is kind of key.
We have the great advantage with the Slack group that it's such a multicultural setting. A lot of people from different backgrounds and also from different countries. Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of details about about how to make this more diverse, how to make it look like, because we want to reach a worldwide population. Like we are not designing this only for the US or only for Ireland. Like we want this to be widely applicable. So how to incorporate the cultural setting and how to incorporate the diversity perspective.
Moving this out, where do you think you're going to go with this next? Is there more that you need to do for frontline staff, or are you going to look at a wider community, a wider audience?
I think right now we are going to pursue a wider audience. PPE is probably the most critical issue for frontline staff. There is another one that we really want to do about the fitting test of the masks. Because it's something that with the N95s especially, like they need to be fitted, and it's something that it needs to be reminded of. But then we want to move more to a community setting, because right now with these movements and the guidance of masks for all, and we are seeing that that's great, but the proper use of those masks is what's going to make the difference. This is like a dynamic process, so we move with the needs of the people.
Yeah, absolutely. Jasmine, I know we were trying to create kind of black and white visuals, and visuals that could be applied to more low resource contexts, some of the refugee camps and the other sources that have talked to us. Was that a really important fixture of what you were trying to do?
We have one of them that has no text whatsoever. And so that one was designed specifically for communities where not everybody may be literate, on just general hygiene practices of washing hands, maintaining distance, and so on. So I would love to keep doing ones like that. I think we're trying to find some balance between, for instance, trying to show how to properly wear and maintain a mask without any words at all might be too ambiguous. But trying to still keep it very simple. And yeah, I think having it just be black and white, no words, is great because it can reach out to different communities.
Yeah, and it's also something that we can share from here to help. You know, we might not be able to send materials, or that, you know, those things might be in the process, but you can send a file and they can, you know, someone can print a poster on the other end of the world that could help to save lives. Some of the real beauty behind what you're doing is the knock-on effects from these posters, and how they can help to inform and educate people.
Another thing is that all of this, it's open source. So, I mean, people can also take advantage of what we have done to a certain point and improve it. Like if there are other teams in different cultural settings that they have the desire of using these materials, but then perhaps improve it or put some of their culture on it. I think that's a good thing about this, that we don't want to own this fully and keep it for ourselves. What we want is for people to take this as a tool to educate the communities.
Is that the dream, Jasmine? You know, like, what do you really want? What would you love to see coming out of this group of posters?
I mean, I guess pretty much what you said. I'd love to see them be spread and be made useful in places where they would help people, even if it's, you know, again, it's hard for me to relate to a healthcare worker, but I actually have the coming home one taped on my door right now for like coming home from groceries. Or if, you know, we were talking about refugee camps, if it reminds somebody to keep distance or to, you know, cough into their arm, and that helps to flatten the curve, then I think that's really what I want, is just to see the materials get used for education to help people.
I envision this like in different languages, applicable for different settings.
And so really what we want people to do, you know, now that these are on the website and we're going to start sharing them on social media, we want people to share them and to spread them and to use them.
Thank you also to the entire team for being so supportive throughout. And again, it's just been stunning to me how much time and effort people have been willing to put into this, like seconding a lot of what Paula said, but like, we would not have the black and white images we have would not have been a third as good if I had made them. Doe actually took my color work and then made them in black and white and just made it just so clear and easy to read. And I've actually just learned a lot.
From my perspective, and I think from Jill and TeamOSVX and TeamOSV, like, it has been a real joy to see you just take this and run with it. I think, you know, some of the projects that we're doing, that you can see the tangible benefit from them. So you can see that the face shield is going to the person that needs it, or the mask. And there's less tangible output with these posters, but they're just as important, if not more important. So I think it's very brave that you take on a project where you're not going to get that positive reinforcement so much, but you still know it's really important. I think there's a real, real bravery to that.
It's amazing to see other projects from other people, from other projects that you're not involved in, and it looks amazing. But somebody was literally asking me today for instructions on how to don and off PPE, and I didn't realize this existed. So this is amazing. So just a million, like, so yeah.